What's up, everybody? Welcome to Thursday Night Fantasy and Frames. We're the draft show. And tonight, guys, we believe that defense does win championships, and we're going to prove it. Guys, if you've ever stared at an IDP draft board like it personally offended you, I want you to know that tonight you are in the right place, because joining us, we have our Fantasy and Frames founder, Jorge Edwards, aka the man who dreams in tackle stats. And we have the godfather of IDP himself. We have Mr. Gary Davenport here. And listen, if these two cannot help you draft a linebacker without spiraling, no one can. So buckle up, grab your cheat sheets. It's time to get a little defensive. What's up, everybody? How are we doing tonight? Erica's here with us. Jorge, Gary, how you guys doing?
Love you, Charlene. Are you going to be in the Shoot the Gap Listener League this year? Let us know, because we're going to be announcing that over the weekend. Defense Listener League talk, getting ready to get going.
That was a fantastic intro, Stacey.
Thank you.
Thank you on point. Loved it.
Thank you. We got a little creative sometimes. I'm trying to spice up my openings a little bit. So hopefully you guys like that. If you didn't, don't tell me.
I just wish I could get through an IDP draft and draft a linebacker without spiraling, because it seems like at some point things always just go, yeah.
They go sideways. When is it too early to draft Ed Reed? Is he still available?
It's more like when it's too late to draft Ed Reed, and okay. I'd say about 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Had to be a defensive back. Just had to be a defensive back.
Well, yeah, Gary and I are very, when it comes to defensive backs, we butt heads a little bit there. So, yeah.
By which he means he's wrong.
You know what happened to the Godfather in the Godfather movies? Nothing good after, he got into the tomato plant field.
Yeah, but he still got to be the Godfather. So
I guess that's fair point.
For 3 whole movies. Yeah. I did a Godfather tour when I went to Sicily a couple years ago, and I got to see some of the filming locations. It's one of my favorite.
That would be so awesome.
It was very, very cool. Very cool. Sicily is a very fun place. Don't go on a holiday though, because literally nothing's open. So we just got to walk around and not do any.
That's because people in Europe have enough sense. When it's a holiday, everybody celebrates the holiday. Mm-hmm. And no, you have to go get your beverages and your bratwurst and, well, not bratwurst in Italy, but whatever you're going to eat during your holiday celebration. You got to get that the day before, because the store is going to be closed, because those poor bastards that work at the grocery store are allowed to have a day off once in a while.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
No, not in America.
Not familiar.
You better get to Kroger and start slinging produce, buddy.
Well, guys, like I said, tonight is IDP night. So you guys know here at the Draft Show, our job is to share all the different ways that there are to play fantasy football. And so tonight we wanted to highlight IDP, individual defensive players, because that is not what I don't feel like it gets a lot of love. So we have got 2 really great resources here for you tonight. We've got Jorge Edwards. You guys know Jorge. He's the founder of Fantasy and Frames. He's an IDP veteran. We have also got Gary Davenport. He, like I said, is the godfather of IDP. You can find Gary on Bleacher Report, NBC, Fantasy Sharks, The Athletic, all Fantasy and Frames too, and Football Guys. So, guys, thanks so much for joining us and sharing some of your time with us tonight.
Thank you very much for having us. It's always a pleasure to share the screen with everybody here, and to have the godfather of IDP talk about some IDP. I mean, it doesn't really get too much better than that.
Yeah.
Don't try to butter me up. You're still wrong about defensive backs.
No, I'm not. I am not wrong about defensive backs, Gary. We are never going to. You'll see later on, folks. We get very, very heated when it comes to defensive back talk. So
we've almost come to blows.
Yeah,
exactly 0 times.
Yeah, exactly. At the expo, it's like, I will not buy you a beer. And then 2 seconds later, it's like, okay,
then it's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. But I wanted to do some breaking news real quick. And I don't know if it's really breaking or not, but we do have the latest NFL player falling victim to 4th of July shenanigans. Did you guys see Najee Harris?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Najee Harris has some sort of eye injury after some fireworks went astray.
Yeah. If things would have gotten really bad, and I'm not trying to poke fun at the eye situation here, but if things would have gone really bad, would this have been worse than JPP or not as worse as JPP?
No, I don't think it would be as bad as Pierre Paul because the Chargers have Marion Hampton too. I mean, they already have Najee's replacement. Najee was the lead running back in Los Angeles for a week and a half.
I'm talking from like a human being standpoint, not a football standpoint, but I understand where you're coming from, Gary. Yes.
AVP blew half his hand off. From so far as I know, both of Najee Harris's eyes are still working. When you have millions of dollars and you are a professional athlete, can't you get one of your idiot cousins to light the fireworks off? Aren't there always like hangers on? They're constantly looking for a way to make a buck off your millions. Okay, cousin
Member
Earl,
of the crew.
Cousin Earl, you're my fireworks guy this year, so I'm gonna need you to get up in that U-Haul and make things festive. And then when Cousin Earl gets blown up, they don't make the news.
You know what? There's always another cousin somewhere. Well, if you only have one cousin, I'm sure somebody else has a cousin you can borrow. It's fine. You're good. Don't worry.
Exactly. How do you guys feel about Najee and Omarion Hampton this season? Are you like rather do the value with Najee, or are you going to spend early for Omarion Hampton, or do you not want either one?
I'd rather trust the younger player in this situation, given the first round draft capital. So I'd rather have Omarion Hampton. I would rather have him. I am not going to be drafting him where his ADP is at. So I think I'd rather originally before Najee almost lost an eye, I would have taken him in at value. I may have to push him down a little bit farther, considering this situation. Obviously, we don't know all the details yet, but if it proves to be really bad, then obviously I'm not drafting him. If it's like slightly bad, push it back a little bit.
Yeah, if he shows up like to training camp or something with like a pirate eye patch, then no thanks.
Yeah, that's bad. But I agree with Jorge 100%. At ADP, Hampton is just he's being overdrafted. I mean, you can say what you want about which Najee Harris and fireworks is kind of ironic because if there's one thing he ain't been in the NFL, it's explosive. But he's always runs for 1,000 yards. He's never missed a game. He's like an upside vampire just waiting to suck all the fantasy goodness out of Hampton this year. Unless he's now a Cyclops, in which case...
Not so much.
Hampton's ADP going bang, pow, zoom.
729 was the timestamp for that. I'm gonna write that one down. We gotta save that one. That was a good one. Were you about to say something?
No, I'm still laughing. That's my bad. No, we're good.
All right, guys. So for those of us that aren't super familiar with IDP, Jorge, what is IDP?
So it's a format of fantasy football that can be applied either in redraft or in dynasty settings. IDP stands for individual defensive player. And unlike, common standard leagues, where you have a defense special teams combo there, here we are actually looking at the, as the acronym says, individual defensive players. You can, roster people like, TJ Watt or, linebackers, defensive backs, defensive linemen. I mean, it's all on the table. You want to get obviously your highest scoring defensive players on your roster. No kidding, right? Just like on offense, IDP has a little bit more of a subtle nuance to it. There's more variability and like scoring platforms and whatnot, and as well as like platforms in general where you can play IDP. Like Sleeper is really good. MFL is king when it comes to IDP just because of the customization aspect. It gives you a little bit more free reign, but at the same time, it can be a little bit overwhelming to some people. So that's why people tend to like shy away from IDP because it's like I don't have like a set way of like playing. There's no like you go to like a sleeper league, for example. You go on sleeper, you start a league, everything is like preset for you. Quarterback scoring, running back scoring, wide receiver scoring, PPR default settings. There are all these default settings no matter the platform. There is no default setting for IDP. Everything is like completely customizable. So you really have to like tailor, where you value different defensive players based off of the scoring settings of your league that you come up with yourself. But that being said, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, there are ways to kind of compartmentalize different types of scoring within IDP.
Yeah, and it's a reservation I hear from people probably more than any other is that it's too complicated. I don't want to hear about how the draft is longer. Yes, the draft is longer, but draft day is like fantasy football Christmas. Everyone's happy. Everyone's 0-0. So don't tell me tacking 2 hours on your draft is a bad thing, liar. That it's too complicated. It's really not. It's just, running backs get points for rushing yards and touchdowns. Wide receivers get receiving yards and touchdowns and usually receptions now, blah, blah, blah. IDPs get it for tackles and sacks and interceptions. And you can make a fairly simplistic IDP scoring system that will still give a little weight to the defensive players without reinventing the wheel. It's really not. There have been so many people over I've been doing this a long time, who I've gotten to try an IDP league. And once they did, they were like, oh, this is awesome. The first ever fantasy football league, the Greater Oakland Pigskin Pronostic, I forget what it was called, invented back in, I think it was like 1966, 1967, had IDPs in it for a reason. Defense matters. What won last year's Super Bowl?
Defense.
And everybody remembers that Rams Super Bowl versus the Bengals a long time ago, and Cooper Kupp scoring that, touchdown, and everybody's like, that was the game-winning touchdown. Like, no, that wasn't. The game-winning play was Aaron Donald sacking Joe Burrow to end that Super Bowl and secure that victory. So that was the, and let's just face it, like, as much as we get, caught up in like the finesse aspect of like offense, like, oh, this wide receiver ran a good route and burned somebody up the sidelines for a touchdown, or a running back juked this other guy. Like, IDP is like, it kind of gets you back to kind of the more physical aspect of football. Like, that dude just planted that dude on the ground. Hopefully he doesn't have any long-term sustained injuries, but like, get some, so it kind of like adds a little bit more of the ferocity that sometimes I think fantasy football is lacking.
Oh, there's poetry to it too, though. Watching Myles Garrett come around that edge and just go right past an offensive line. That's like the wide receiver. It's like the wide receiver being around, or watching an edge rusher do a spin move, or watching Aaron Donald's first step where he would just explode through the line of scrimmage. Yeah, it's the same. It's just a little different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gary, you brought up the Super Bowl last year. Like, the one play that sticks out in my mind most from the Super Bowl, the Cooper Jejin pick 6, right? Like, I'm not an Eagles fan, and I was jumping up and down on the couch, like screaming, like, "Oh my God, he got the interception! Like, he's gonna get a touchdown." So that definitely, I love that. I had no idea that it went back as far as the original fantasy league.
I didn't know that the original fantasy league was in the 60s. That's pretty.
I did know that.
Yeah, it was sports writers in Oakland, Raiders guys.
Huh.
Yeah. Matthew Berry does a what was that show called with Peyton Manning, Peyton's Places or something like that? Peyton, yeah. He does we do a history of fantasy football in the first season.
Huh. Fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. That's a great episode too, by the way. Go check that out. Yeah. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about how you guys both got into IDP. Gary, how did you first get into this format? Have you always played IDP during fantasy, or is this something that you kind of found your way into?
I can't say I always played, but by my second or third year of fantasy, I had heard about leagues with defensive players, and I've always been a defense first guy. So, I mean, while people were watching, wide receivers run routes and running backs hit the hole, I'm the kind of guy who's watching what the linebackers and the safeties are doing, trying to figure out which guy's going to blitz and which guy's going to drop into coverage. So once I heard there were leagues where defensive players actually mattered, I was pretty much instantly hooked. And then when Scott Fish and I started Fantasy Football Oasis in the long ago time, I decided to write about IDP, honestly, for selfish reasons. I figured, because at the time, there are a lot more great IDP resources than there used to be, such as Fantasy and Frames. Plug.
Thank you.
Back then, there weren't that many, so I figured it would give me an opportunity to be kind of a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And it worked.
Yeah, for me, when I first started playing fantasy football, I always had an IDP position, like a IDP spot on my roster. So that's something that's never been, like, when I found out that there were leagues like where they're just defense special teams, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't get this. Where things really went down the rabbit hole, though, was again early on during playing fantasy football. I joined a league where there was like a defensive lineman and a linebacker and a defensive back, and I'm like new to fantasy football, and I'm taking like Drew Brees with the number 3 overall pick. It's like, yeah, what could go wrong? You're drafting a quarterback number 3 when you can get a value at running back or wide receiver or any other position, any other player that could have done well for you. No, you'll get a quarterback at number 3 overall. Great job, Jorge. And I'm having a bad game week 1, shocker. And then all of a sudden I see like I'm down like by like 30 points, and all of a sudden my linebackers make a couple plays and get a turnover, and then next thing you know, that like cut the deficit in half, and then next thing you know, they make some more tackles and I end up winning the game. And I'm like, holy crap, so you're telling me my offensive players played like crap, but I was saved by these defensive players? Let me learn more about like how they're actually helping me and how they're contributing to my overall performance here for my team. And after I realized, like, yeah, you kind of think of it as like how you would real football. Like you have, back in the day when people were still using kickers in their fantasy leagues, you got special teams, you got your offensive players, you got your defensive players. It's just like a football team, today. So that all encompassing nature of how it reminded me of just the NFL in general, it got me hooked. And I'm just like, okay, well, let me learn more about it. Let me preach about it. And that's where, when I started Fantasy and Frames, I made a point to like, okay, we're going to talk about everything, including IDP, because it's so much fun. Like, like to Gary's point, not necessarily 2 hours tacked onto your draft, although truth be told, that is what it is for a lot of my home leagues. But you don't have to like go all in. For people who are like on the edge of like whether I want to do it or not, like you can like take a couple players and just see what happens. And so I there is something to be said for like mimicking the real NFL, and there's also something to be said for like trying something new. Like and it's one of those things where it's like, if you like it, great. If you don't, okay, but at least you said that you gave it a shot. Sometimes I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are just like, no, if I have to memorize 60 names instead of 55, then I'm out all completely. I'm like, dude, like, or dudette, like, come on, let's not, it's 5 players extra that you're learning their names. Like, I feel like that's not too much to ask for.
You hit on something there, though. Okay, let's say we're watching Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football. Usually you've only got a player or 2 left. You're watching that guy just intently to see what he's going to do in the game. Even if it's a game that you don't, 2 teams you don't care about. You add IDPs in the mix, and all of a sudden you've got a couple guys going. You've got like one guy going in every game. So every game there's someone to watch. And honestly, that's a lot of the fun of fantasy football, is just we all sit and watch football obsessively all day Sunday, because there's always someone that we need to run faster, run harder, sack that guy, get that interception. And it's a blast. It's a riot.
Well, and it makes it too, so like if you're just stuck watching the red zone, right, you're not getting to watch the defensive side, at all either. So now you can go watch, the games in full and enjoy all of it, and not just that. Right, I like what you were saying about how, like all of a sudden, like you're looking at your lineup and somebody, like you've got a defensive guy that's got like all these points. That was me last year with Aiden Hutchinson before he got hurt. Like, I mean, he was going crazy in our Fantasy and Frames league. And then sad for me, he did not after that injury, but I'll get him back this year. That's okay.
Yeah, broken leg will do that to you. But like you said, he'll be coming back strong again. So
yeah,
you're in a good spot.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I tell me like a little bit about like the scoring formats here. Like, what are you getting points for? Like, what kind of things are we looking for? Are there like higher points for certain things? Like, like touchdowns, or, like 4 or 6 points depending on your league. Like, what does that look like on the IDP perspective?
Gary, you want to start with this?
It could look like anything. I mean, there's scoring that's relatively tame, and then they're scoring like the Kings Classic Butkus division that is not. You're going to get points for solo tackles, assists, and just to lump them all in together, big plays, which is forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, interceptions, sacks. The important thing you want to look at when you're looking at your IDP scoring is what is the ratio between solo tackles and those big plays, because that will go a long way towards telling you what sort of players you should target. Like if a solo tackle is worth a 1.5 and a sack is only worth 3, then you want to be all over high tackle linebackers, safeties, even the defensive linemen that get a lot of tackles but might only get 7 or 8 sacks. Those are the guys you want. If your solo tackle is only worth a point and your sack is worth 4, then those guys that make those big plays become that much more valuable. As Jorge said, there's a lot more variance in IDP scoring. But honestly, there's 2 things you need to know. You need to know the ratio between tackles and big plays, and you need to know how the defensive players stack up against the offensive player. Because if you look at the whole list of players, and like the highest scoring IDP was scored on par with, say, a wide receiver 3, that'll give you, I'm not saying that's when the first IDP will come off the board. It gives you something of a benchmark you can start with if you're unfamiliar with the format, and you're probably not going to be that far off.
Yeah, like one of the things I like to do is kind of clump all the different type of scoring, because there's different scoring formats out there. Like Fantasy Pros has their own scoring rubric. There's a scoring setting called IDP 1, 2, 3. There's one that's called Big 3 IDP. Different platforms have different rubrics that they go off of, and they customize their content around that. But even though they have all these different types of scoring settings, and then some people's home leagues can be completely different from all those. But everything kind of falls under 3 categories. You have your balanced leagues, where it's like, to what Gary was saying, as far as like the ratios, like the tackles to big plays, it's kind of like comparable to one another. So you kind of have to, there is benefits in taking either a defensive lineman or a linebacker first. And it's not like you have to focus on one position as far as being the priority. Like you can take a gamble on multiple positions. Then you have your tackle heavy leagues, where, like Gary was saying, you want to go after those high volume tacklers. And then you have your big play leagues, where it's like, let me get those edge rushers. Let me get the TJ Watts and the Myles Garretts and the Aiden Hutchinsons who get those sacks, because you want to maximize, how you're getting the points and where you're getting the points from.
Most leagues, in my experience anyway, tend to at least lean tackle heavy.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of rare to play in a really big play heavy league.
Right. Because like big plays, like, one of the things I think is most concerning and confusing to people is, once you have your scoring setting figured out, everybody wants to like find a comparison between defensive players and offensive players and how to assign value. Like, especially like during trades, when you're in like a league that has both offensive and defensive players,
Good luck.
it's like, is TJ Watt, like a RB2? Is he a wide receiver 1? Like, where does he fall into play? And so again, it comes down to like what the scoring settings, and numbers just don't lie. Like, if he's averaging the same amount of points per game consistently week in and week out as a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2, then there you go. There's your comparison. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, people get stuck in, the old way of thinking of like, I could never give up, Malik Neighbors for insert top defensive player. Oh, why? Why couldn't you? Because Malik Neighbors gets me all those points, so it's this defensive player.
I traded Derrick Henry last year in Butkus for, what was it? It was TJ Watt and Jerry Jeudy, and I threw in another receiver that wasn't as good as Jeudy. So I'm not, but it's hard. Jorge's right. It's hard to trade defense for offense, and honestly, it probably always will be. I just it's people just look at it as apples and oranges, and it's hard to make fruit punch.
24-20. I'm going to write that timestamp down.
Do you prefer leagues that are all straight IDP or the combo?
So I like both. There's definitely more of a challenge when it's just IDP only. Like all my Dynasty IDP leagues, except for like the Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League, are all just IDP players. That's it. And I absolutely love it, because once you get past the big names and the big time consistent producers, now you're getting into like, okay, who has the most upside here? And it's kind of like on offense, when you think about it, it's like, who's getting the most snaps, who's getting the most playing time, who's getting the most targets if you're a wide receiver, who's getting the most receptions, who's getting the most rushing attempts. It's all about how often you are on the field and how often you're featured. And the same thing goes for defensive players. It's like, are they staying on all 3 downs? Are they are quarterbacks targeting this defensive back because he's really bad at covering wide receivers, and the wide receivers always catch a pass whenever he's defending? That's the defensive back you want, because that guy is always going to have the ball thrown in his direction, and he'll have an opportunity to either swat the ball down or to make an interception. One of the things that is kind of backwards in terms of thinking when it comes to IDP fantasy football is just because a player is good defensively in the NFL does not necessarily make them good for IDP fantasy football. So, like, take for example Sauce Gardner, the shutdown cornerback for the New York Jets. Like, great for real football. You don't want to draft him for IDP. You know why? Because quarterbacks realize, hey, he's really good, and he could probably intercept me multiple times in a game. So I'm going to avoid throwing the ball at you, and I'm throwing the ball at the other side. And therefore, if the guy's not having the ball thrown at him, he's not going to have an opportunity to make any plays. So that's not a person you want necessarily. And again, that's a kind of like a nuance of defensive backs. Linebackers, it's another thing. Like linebackers, like, do you want the linebacker who's just good at stopping the run, or do you want the linebacker that's good at stopping the run and also playing in coverage? Because if he's good at playing in coverage on passing downs or on third downs, he's staying on the field, thus giving you another opportunity to get play and make fantasy points. If he's not good at coverage, he's probably coming off the field and they're bringing somebody else in, or they're shifting their defensive rotations around, and therefore he only gives you 2 opportunities to make a play versus having 3. So, I mean, again, there's subtle nuances to like where you're getting the opportunities from, and more often like why you're getting those opportunities. And it's the same thing for an offensive, player. It's like, well, why am I going to take this wide receiver? It's like, because the quarterback targets him all the time. Why am I taking Khalil Shakir? Why did I take Wan'Dale Robinson? These slot wide receivers, because the middle linebacker, or the weak side linebacker, or the safety gives up a lot of receptions, and therefore that's the guy you want. So again, it's all about opportunity, and there's just different ways of like defining what that opportunity is. And once you figure out how to do so, everything starts to click, and then you get an appreciation for like both the offensive side of the ball when you're watching an NFL, and also the defensive side of the ball when you're watching the NFL.
I love IDP only. And actually, Jorge, I know the league has got a couple of things if you want to pick up another one. But there's just something about a deep IDP league where you got offense and defense, full defensive lineup, 10 or 11 starters, like deathmatch and the Buckus division, where like every draft pick, there's like 7 different directions you can go with the pick. And you're just like terrified every time you make a selection. I swear, by the time we walk out of that room in Canton in a month, I am going to be so ready for a drink and possibly a lobotomy. Because it's like 6 hours of pulling your hair out because you're getting sniped left and right. There's 14 teams. There ain't enough good linebackers to go around. Defensive players start getting drafted early. It's just anyone who says they have a strategy for that draft, and this is the 3rd year we've done it, so you would think someone would have a plan. No, there is no, because your plan will last like 4 picks, and then you're like, ah. And I love that. I love that feeling of not having any idea what the hell I'm doing, because it makes fantasy football fun again. I mean, I've been in, I don't know how many leagues, way too many. I'm a degenerate. And some of them, it's pretty easy to just kind of roll through the draft, and you get done with a regular 16-round offense-only draft. And you feel like, well, that team's going to be fine. I don't feel that way about teams in like deathmatch and the hard-hitting IDP leagues. And I'm supposed to be the godfather of IDP and know what the hell I'm talking about. So I love being dumb, I guess.
You mentioned the butt kiss and having a drink after the draft. I'm bringing drinks to the draft in my little mini cooler. So
yeah, you guys need drinks during.
Go right ahead. Well, I'm not. I mean, I can neither confirm nor deny that a flask might be in my backpack. I mean, I'm not trying to violate any rules or.
Sorry, Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Your secret is safe with us. Well, speaking of deep IDP leagues, we got a question from Kyle over here. We also have one from that we'll get to. But Kyle's question is, that he's in a 32-team IDP. He's making cuts pretty much now. So he wants to know, is he keeping linebacker Baron Browning from Arizona or other linebacker Arden Key from Tennessee? And Kyle, I will see you on Saturday, as will Erica. We will both be in Orlando for the Scott Fish Bowl draft.
Orlando.
Right on.
Yeah.
Gary, you want to start, or you want me to take this one?
I think it's Browning pretty easily. I mean, I'll defer to you, but to me, it's an easy one.
Right. So this is where things kind of get interesting. So like linebackers is an interesting position because you got your inside linebackers that primarily help with run support. And then you got your outside linebackers, which are kind of like your edge rushers, like your TJ Watts, or in this case, your Baron Brownings. And so Baron Browning was an edge rusher or outside linebacker for the Denver Broncos last year. He gets traded to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals re-signed him to, I think, like a 3-year X amount of millions of dollars deal. So he's going to have the opportunity to, to make plays as a starting outside linebacker / edge rusher. The Cardinals, I'm not really predicting them to be really good, as the people say with air quotes, good this year. So I would expect that defense to be on the field a lot. And there we go. That's what I was talking about earlier. Like more opportunities, more time on the field, more opportunities to make plays. And I would go with the guy who's going to have the opportunity versus Arden Key, kind of getting up there, not somebody that I'm super high on there in Tennessee.
If Arden Key is starting for the Titans, it's going to be a long year in Nashville, y'all.
The funny thing is, Kyle is a Titans fan, so that is hilarious. That is actually pretty funny.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe there's a little loyalty. He's clinging to the hope.
Mm-hmm.
There is no hope, Kyle. The Titans suck. Sorry.
There is no hope in Tennessee. At least they're getting a new stadium, right?
Hey,
it looks nice.
I'm a Browns fan, so if anyone knows about no hope,
suffering.
I know nothing but despair and misery.
Keep that positivity going, Gary. I love it.
Woo! I've walked out into traffic like 8 times. The freaking cars won't hit me.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! That's how bad it is.
Oh, we got another question from Mel real quick. So she wants to know, like, what round, you're in a, combo.
The magic question.
Yep. What is a good round to start picking defensive players? We're talking about a 16-round draft. So a little bit of a shallow draft. I would say shallow, but not as, so you're going to have to start picking them a little bit earlier, I would think.
You go first, Jorge.
So again, it depends on like how many defensive players you have on your roster, right? So that's going to dictate a lot. So the more IDP roster spots, the earlier you want to address the IDP position. If it's just one in a shallow league, then you can wait and just wait till the 13th, the double digit rounds, probably the 10th round, 11th round, to get an elite edge rusher or get an elite linebacker. And again, it depends on the scoring. If the scoring favors people who score a lot of tackles, the good thing about linebacker is you can get an elite linebacker, but you can also wait on linebacker because there's a lot of linebackers out there that get you high tackle volume. So you don't necessarily have to go for the quote unquote, top of the line linebacker. You can find more value later in your draft. Now, if it's multiple roster spots, I would want to get my 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and then get an elite IDP after that. You can make the argument for getting 3 running backs and 3 wide receivers and then get your quarterback and tight ends and whatever later on in your draft.
Like Jorge, there are a lot of variables here. How many IDPs are you starting? What's the scoring look like? Offense versus defense, relative, yada, yada, yada. Generally speaking,
so she's got 22 roster spots. So I guess I was 16 in the original question, but it looks like it's 22.
It depends on how many you're starting. The great thing is you don't need to really worry about it if you're not super familiar with IDP. At some point, people are going to start plucking those elite guys, TJ Watt, Zaire Franklin. Those guys will trickle off the board. And then a round or 2 later, there will be the first really big concerted run at IDP. Just make sure you're in that run. Make sure you get a top 7 or 8 linebacker or a top 7 or 8 edge rusher, and you'll probably be fine. Everyone worries about setting the pace. I'm rarely the first guy to draft an IDP in leagues, and I'm a degenerate. 16 teams. Woo! Ooh. Now we talk. I'm in a 16 team IDP only one. By round 3, the linebackers are so depressing. It's just, okay, it takes the LB1 like 4th, 5th round. That honestly generally is where you will see in kind of a standard IDP setup where the elite guys will go. It's around round 4, round 5. But you can wait until that run in round 7 and be okay. Now, if you want to set the pace, set the pace. Take the guy you want. It's your team, it's your draft. But you don't have to be the pace car in an IDP draft to win the race.
And not to mention, like, if you're concerned about, like, if you're new to it, you know, and you're like, oh, it's round 5 or round 6 or what have you, and it's like, should I take another, you know, should I take my wide receiver 3 who's going to be averaging 9.8 points a game, or should I be going after a linebacker who's giving me 14 points a game? Take the person who's giving you more points.
It's the FF7, Jorge. Well, that
I love that. First of all, IDP Iggy does a great charity tournament for Kawasaki disease. The FF7 is an offense and IDP combo league. It is great. Shout out to Iggy.
How early is Travis Hunter going to go there?
I am so fading Travis. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on Travis Hunter.
I know, but seriously, because he has quarterback eligibility there, though. So you're putting a wide receiver in a DB slot. Yeah. I'm not doing it either, but I'm just saying, how early is he going to go? I wouldn't be surprised if Travis Hunter doesn't make it out the first round in the FF7. I would not. He's going in round 3, round 4 in Fishbowl.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Stacey, you're about to say something about Travis Hunter?
No, I said, Jorge, don't get ahead of us on the show sheet, because I have people that I have questions about specific players.
I have been asked more about Travis Hunter than I ever have about any defensive player, because really he's a wide receiver right now more than anything, ever. And it's the 10th of July. So I've still got like a month and a half of this to go through.
I bet you were getting questions about him the day he got drafted.
More or less.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote 2 articles about him, one for Football Guys and one for The Athletic, because even though I had just written one for Football Guys, The Athletic was like, hey, can you do a Travis Hunter article? I was like, well, I just kind of did a Travis Hunter article. They were like, well, will you do another one? Yeah. Okay.
So speaking
of
Travis
Hunter, maybe he'll appear behind me.
Beetlejuice. At least you're not saying Candyman, because that's a horror movie.
Oh, Bloody Mary. See, now we're Biggie Smalls.
And then Tupac appears. Okay, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, does it work with Tupac? Yeah.
Now, wasn't that the episode where Butters gets to go to Satan's Halloween party?
I think so, yeah.
So we have a lot of IDP beginners here. Who are your guys's do not draft traps for beginners? You mentioned Sauce Gardner earlier just because he doesn't get the targets. So who's another guy like that?
So generally speaking, people like linebackers who are in crowded situations. So I'll give you a good example. So EJ Speed, a former linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts, using, like, for example, Fantasy Pro scoring, was a top 12 linebacker in points per game. He became a free agent this year, and when it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I don't care where he does and how he measures up for real football. At least that's what I thought initially. Wherever he lands, he's going to be the starting linebacker. And then all of a sudden, it took him like months to find a team. Why? Because in real football, like, he's not that great. And he basically ended up joining the Houston Texans, which already had a crowded linebacking core to begin with. So now that, like, elite, LB1 opportunity that he was getting in Indianapolis, he's not getting now in Houston, because obviously there's other linebackers ahead of him on the pecking order. So he would be one person I would avoid also this year. Another thing I would say is, like, be careful for the 1-year wonders, because you like to look at consistency. Shout out Bob Lung, who likes to talk about fantasy football consistency. You have people who are like, outside the top 40 for like 4 years, and all of a sudden they have a top, 20 finish, and then you're just like, oh, well, they turned the corner. They must be good. And it's like, Are you going to invest a high draft pick for your IDP leagues, like in somebody who just like happened to turn the corner after 4 years, or are you going to be with somebody who's going to be a little bit more consistent? I would rather take the consistent player than the one who may have been a one-hit wonder.
I'll bang 3 quick ones, one at each position. On the defensive line, Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals led the NFL in sacks last year, still in a contract dispute. I expect that will be resolved at some point, but we've seen what happened to guys who lose an offseason, especially when they're the wrong side of 30, and he's never been a high tackle guy either. So if he doesn't get those 15 sacks, his floor is low. At linebacker, I'm sorry that I'm about to say this, Jorge, and you know that I love him. Bobby Wagner is getting old. His numbers last year were what? His worst in a decade. His statistical production was what? His worst in a decade last year. I just don't. People are paying for the name. I'm not saying I wouldn't draft Bobby Wagner as, say, a high-end LB2, but he's not going to be there then. He's probably coming off the board in the top 10 because everybody loves it. And then any elite defensive back, Buda Baker, Brian Branch, Antoine Winfield Jr., name any of them. Don't be the first person to take a defensive back in your league because that's just dumb.
See, that's what I was falling into, like our first year that I did the Fantasy and Frames League, because I didn't really know that much about IDP. So I'm just like thinking, all right, I'm going to get names that I know for players, and I'm sure that has helped me come in towards the end of the last part of our league over the last couple years. But that's like, those are good names to know and good things to think about for people that are just starting out in IDP. You don't necessarily want to go with, the big name players just because you know them and you know that they're, defensive stars for Sunday football. They're just not necessarily going to help your fantasy team.
Jorge just hates staring at me after I disparage Bobby Wagner.
Oh, yes. I have his jersey framed in one of these.
I have a picture of him on my wall. He's wearing a Seahawks uniform.
Well, you know what? That picture is crying right now. That picture is alive, and tears of blood are coming out of his eyes on your wall in that picture.
Next to him is London Fletcher, so don't act like I don't give your team some love.
The funny thing, here's the thing. I'm not a huge London Fletcher guy. I got to be honest with you. I'm not.
Oh, he was fantastic. He was
he was like in real life, he was like a dick. He would always like blow off his charity events and stuff. He was not very like.
I don't care.
Well, give me a murder for all I care. Just give me the goddamn tackles.
Get 11 tackles on Sunday, and I don't give, smack your kids around. Like, how many fantasy managers gave a crap about Adrian Peterson's kid getting hit with a switch? I mean,
really. Or Ray Wright, any of those guys. Yeah. Kamara.
There ain't a team in the NFL ain't got a scumbag on it. And as long as they score points and do their
thing, the ugly side of the NFL when it comes to viewing the NFL, exactly.
For sure. Hey guys, Angie has a quick question for you guys. So she's got a 14-team full offensive, full IDP keeper league on MFL. She wants to know Zach Bond or Roquan. Is that Roquan Smith? I think.
Yeah.
At linebacker, there we go. She said Bond scored about 25 more points total last year. So, would you rather? Which one? What do you think, guys?
You want to start this one, Jorge? Because I might need to ponder for a second.
So, Zach Bond was a special teamer for the New Orleans Saints before coming over to Philadelphia. And then last year, he just exploded on the scene when he was given the opportunity to play at inside linebacker. And the guy was just like making big plays, racking up tackles. Like, had he not missed one game, I think it was like week 14 where he missed a game, like he would have been leading the league in tackles, total tackles for the league for the entire season. And he got signed by the Philadelphia Eagles, I want to say, to like a 3-year extension back in March. So you have a really good performance after many years of not having the opportunity. And it's not like he had poor performances, like I was alluding to earlier, where there's like you play bad, and then you have a one spike year. He just was never given that full-time role. So it's a little bit different in that situation versus Roquan Smith, where, they've been trying to find that, counterpart to him in that linebacking core. And they tried for so long for Patrick Queen to be that guy. And then finally, like the 1 year he finally came through, they let him go to Pittsburgh the following year. And then they've been trying to like find that next guy to be next to Roquan Smith. And Trenton Simpson was somebody that they were trying to draft, or they drafted. and they wanted him to be that next 1A to Roquan's, or 1B to Roquan's 1A. That hasn't materialized. So you got a situation here where it's like you got two elite linebackers. I would go Roquan because I know that the tackle volume is going to go through him because he's not sharing the tackle load or splitting those tackles with anybody else in that linebacking core versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I am concerned that they'll find somebody else to slide in next to Zach Bond and kind of siphon away a few of the tackle opportunities, just because Philadelphia is really good at stacking that defense and just cycling in players in and out. So I would go Roquan here.
Both guys are in my top 5. Roquan is admittedly my number 1, if only because he has a much longer track record of production than what Zach Bond did. What Zach Bond did last year was incredible. He was like reverse Andrew Van Ginkel, or Andrew Van Ginkel was reverse Zach Bond. For some reason, the Saints decided Zach Bond was an edge rusher. No, apparently, he's an off-ball linebacker because once he started playing that, he exploded. I don't know that there's really a wrong answer to that. I don't know that you're going to be disappointed regardless of who you take. But yeah, I'd have to lean with Jorge toward because Roquan Smith might be the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL, just based on talent.
So there you go.
Didn't stick with the Bears either.
I actually have a helmet here that's up. Where is it? There. Roquan Smith's Chicago Bears helmet. Yeah.
The Bears didn't want to keep Roquan. They wanted to let him go and then give Tremaine Edmonds way too much money.
You know what's interesting? Not a tall person. He's actually not a very tall. Like he just barely close to where I am at 6'2". So it's I was expecting more of like a hulking individual. But you know who? Why do I care? He can lay it on the football field. So
I met Luke Kuechly years ago at Radio Road's Super Bowl. He looked like a guy who would be standing in front of you in line at the grocery store. Honestly. Did not look like football superstar. Now, Justin Tuck looked like the Incredible Hulk. I have never seen a human being that large. And I met The Undertaker once, back when he was still a younger wrestler. And that was a big dude. But Justin Tuck's like 6'7", 300 pounds of chiseled granite. I was like, oh my God.
His helmet?
Don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact.
He also had a helmet that looked like he was the Shredder from Ninja Turtles. That was like one of his. It was pretty sweet.
That's amazing.
Fun fact.
Yeah, I saw Warren Sapp one year at a gas station down here in Tampa back when he was playing, and like there was no doubt that man played football. I was like, you definitely play a sport of some kind.
Like, let me ask you a question. Like, if you saw like a big hulking football player and you like, so do you play football? And they're like, no, I'm a masseuse. Would you let that person give you a massage? Because I'd feel like they'd snap my shoulder in half, and I would rather just avoid that altogether than actually have like the chance of, that not being the case.
Sounds like the beginning of one of our romance books. So
I don't even know what the hell to do with that question. If you saw giant,
maybe I should come on the romance book show.
Giant, super muscular football player. Would you ask him for a massage? Yeah. Probably not.
Snap you like twig. I'd rather just avoid.
He's got soft hands though.
There's
moisturizes. Yeah, exactly.
We can't too many scandals with NFL players and massage therapists. We can't.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want to involve an NFL player with.
Oh yeah, totally forgot about that. Wow, it's been a few years, hasn't it? Yeah, touche.
Oh my gosh.
So who are your guys' sleepers for 2025? You got a name?
Gary, why don't you start off and I'll follow up with you.
I got a few. I think people are sleeping on Carl Granderson in New Orleans because he let us down last year a little. He didn't really let us down. He just wasn't quite as good as people expected. Still had 60 tackles, 6.5 sacks. Azeez Ojulari in Philadelphia, if he can stay healthy, could put up ridiculous numbers. Tyrell Dodson in Miami, probably going to wear the green dot for the Dolphins, which the green dot is the sticker that means you have the helmet communicator, and when a linebacker wear that, he don't leave the field. Jalen Carlis in Indianapolis could inherit the EJ Speed role, and we just saw with that. I mean, EJ Speed sucks, and he had, 140-something tackles last year. And then at defensive back, now I'm going to talk up one of your commanders, Will Harris. I think Will Harris could be a sneaky good defensive back pick. He is a capable NFL starter moving into a nice role as the box safety in Washington. And at the Atu Melifonwu in Miami. Things are still unsettled in that Dolphins secondary, but I expect him to be the box safety for the Dolphins. And he showed in Detroit it's not a big sample size. But when Melifonwu did start for the Lions, he got a couple games where he put up some gaudy numbers. And those two defensive backs, they're free. You can get them at the end of the draft.
So let me piggyback off of those last two players you talked about, because coincidentally, last night we did back-to-back episodes of Shoot the Gap where we covered the AFC East and the NFC East, and Melifonwu and Will Harris were brought up. And I'm actually of the take that I'd rather have Quan Martin than Will Harris, and then I'd rather have Ashton Davis over Melifonwu. But that's neither here or there. You all should go and watch listen to Shoot the Gap wherever you listen to podcasts.
We've established that you're wrong about defensive backs anyway. So.
I swear to God, Gary.
I'm just saying it's proven fact. It's like gravity.
It's not a proven fact. It's not like gravity is a law of physics. There is a difference here. Okay.
Okay, so it's like the Earth being flat with a giant ice wall.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know which side of that argument we're on, but I'm going to take the round.
Godfather has spoken, apparently. Okay. Landon Roberts was a linebacker that went over to the Las Vegas Raiders because they lost Robert Swain to the New England Patriots, but they recently brought in Jermaine Pratt to be right next to Landon Roberts. I'd rather have Jermaine Pratt, as he finished as a top producing linebacker in a lot of formats last year with Cincinnati. Nate Landman is somebody that I think could be a sleeper here because he is a free agent that went from the Falcons to the Rams. And the Rams typically have one linebacker patrolling the middle of the field. And there you go. There's all the opportunity. Steve.
Jorge, you better watch, because you're about to say something that is bad for Omar Spates. And the internet is full of people that love Omar Spates. Well, and your Twitter is going to,
sorry, Omar. What can I say? And then for me, let's see, the next one, let me pull up a defensive back here, since I am the defensive back whisperer here. I love a lot of players. I love Tyler Nubin of the New York Giants, who played very well last year, very close to the line of scrimmage guy, helped out a lot in run support, tackle heavy defensive back that I would want here. So those would be my guys there: Landman, Jermaine Pratt, and Tyler Nubin.
I think you get Nubin in a casual league, but there are a lot of folks in the IDP community among us hardcore folk who love Tyler Nubin.
Okay, I know Jaden Hicks of the Chiefs.
Oh, okay, don't get.
Yeah, Gary. What do you think about that? Jaden Hicks,
what?
Tyler Nubin.
What? Huh? You want to go?
Backs?
Let's go.
Well, not buy you a beer.
Internet slap fight.
I will get you a Michelob Ultra at the Canton at the Expo.
I'll drink it if it's free.
I mean, that's a fair point. Yeah.
That is not a threat.
One of the great traditions of the Expo now is Trump beer. You don't get to pick what you get; you just get what you get. Michelob Ultra. Appreciate it.
I got the most amazing koozie out of a trunk beer at the Expo last year. I have it here. I'll show you guys. It says, "I partied with Cocaine Bear."
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, Erica, do you remember whose trunk this came out of? I don't know who it was, but I took a beer there and I saw the koozie and I was like, well, this has to come with me as well.
Yeah, because he just opened his trunk. We all took beers. He had koozies for everyone, and I have no idea.
If you had the I Partied with Cocaine Bear koozie and are listening, please let me know, because it is by far my favorite koozie that I use all the time. Nice. Well, I've got one last question for you guys. Because I know it is it's a little over 10 o'clock. So you guys have spent a lot of your evening with us and we appreciate it. So here's what I want to know. Which team do you guys think is going to have the most fantasy relevant IDP players by the time the season's over?
I really am starting to love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like the opportunity of the edge rusher called Yaya Diaby, who towards the end of last year, in the middle of last year, I want to say really started to pick up in production when you look at a lot of the advanced metrics. You have a third-year player in Servassier Dennis at linebacker who's taking over for KJ Britt. He's going to be kind of playing that Devin White role where he can play off-ball linebacker, but he can also rush the passer. You have next to him older veteran, but still a tackle heavy producer. And why am I blanking right now? And Levante David. And then at defensive back, you have Antoine Winfield Jr. Although Tyke Smith is somebody who's going to be converting to the strong safety or box safety role, formerly a cornerback. So I'm kind of excited for what his upside could be. So yeah, Tampa's starting to make some moves that I'm kind of excited for.
Yeah.
If the Eagles and the Ravens can get some edge, because there's a lot of changes in Philly this year among the edge rushers. If they can get pressure off the edge, they've got linebackers, they got fantasy relevant defensive backs. This makes me kind of nauseous to say it, but Dallas, I mean, you got Micah Parsons on the edge. I expect one of those linebackers is going to wind up being a huge bargain. Whichever one winds up staying on the field, whether it's Kenneth Murray or, oh my God, Jack Sanborn, the IDP community's beloved child.
He is, yeah.
Yes, they've been. And you got the cornerbacks on the back end where if you're in a quarterback required league, Deron Bland and Trevon Diggs, neither one of them are going to cost you a fortune in draft. You can probably wait till the last round to get those guys, and they've shown that they can go crazy with big plays. So there are so many, and it's going to be one of the teams that we haven't mentioned because that's the beauty of IDP is that things very rarely work out like we expect them to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, I think that is going to do it for us here Draft Show tonight. Jorge, Gary, guys, thank you so much for spending your evening with us and sharing all of your IDP knowledge. I hope that was helpful for everybody, and I hope that it encouraged some people to try out IDP for the first time this year. If you guys are looking for a place to play some IDP that you want to just kind of jump in really quick, maybe you don't have the want to do a long-term, like Dynasty League or Keeper League or anything like that, you can go on the Fast Draft app and use our code FRAMES, and you can play the IDP game that they have there called D-Up. So you can go check that out as well. Make sure to use our code FRAMES and you get a match there as well. Jorge, tell the people where they can find you and what you've got to look forward to in the coming months.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on. It's always great to share the screen with members of the Fantasy and Frames family and Gary. Gary's pretty cool too. Which Gary is also a member of the Fantasy and Frames family. Yeah, as he wears the T-shirt and has the logo in the background, and the sticker on the printer. Gotta love it. But yeah, you can find me at Jorge B. Edwards over on X and Blue Sky and I think every social media platform. So just whichever one you want to message me at, go right ahead for fantasy football advice. What do we have going on? You can find me on the Shoot the Gap podcast on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Also on the Dynasty 365 podcast at 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. As far as other content coming out, we're putting out Dynasty IDP Risers and Fallers right now over at fantasyandframes.com. And then this month, we're going to be kicking off our division preview series in article form where we're going to be having division previews on offense and division preview articles for IDP specifically. So next week, the offense AFC East preview and then the IDP AFC East preview will be coming out next week. You can also check out my rankings over at fantasyandframes.com for both Dynasty and Redraft, offense, and IDP.
Nice. Gary, thank you again so much for hanging out with us. Please remind everybody where they can find you, where they can find your content, and tell everybody what you've got going on the last couple months before the season gets started again.
The pleasure was all mine. You can find me on Twitter at IDP Godfather. Dropped an IDP bus hit today at Football Guys. My content at The Athletic is going to be ramping up soon. Always writing a Bleacher Report. I write so many places that sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to leave someone out. So you follow me on Twitter. Every article I write, I will shamelessly self-promote there. So give it a look. That's pretty much the only thing I do on Twitter. post meaningless polls, and probably going to go post a link to the golf club, the golf course fight. I know I'm a couple days late, but I didn't know until today, man. It was awesome.
It's still funny. It's still funny. A day or two late, a golf course fight with a former NHL player is still hilarious. So please do that. All right, guys. Again, if you are going to be in Orlando for the Scott Fishbowl draft, please come say hi to Eric and I. We will both be there. And good luck to you if you are drafting in the Scott Fishbowl this weekend, unless, of course, you are drafting against me in the Orlando Magic division. And then I say no good luck to you. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Guys, if you had a good time tonight, make sure to give us a like, a subscribe, a follow. You can find Fantasy and Frames and all of our content all over the internet, on our website, on our socials. We will be back next week with a draft for you. If you want to know what we're drafting, when we're drafting, got to make sure to give us a subscribe and a follow. So until next Thursday at 9, we'll be back then. Until then, see you guys later.